They say a baby shower is supposed to be one of the happiest days of your life. For me, it was the moment I hit rock bottom. My name is Lily, and until that day, I thought I had it all figured out. I was 32, married, expecting my first baby, a little girl. We'd picked out names, painted the nursery a soft lavender, and I genuinely believed I was living the dream. You see, I'd always been the planner, the one with lists and backup plans. My life was a carefully constructed building, and I thought this baby was just the beautiful new wing I was adding. I had no idea the foundation was about to crumble. The shower was at my sister-in-law's house. It was a beautiful day in late spring, sunshine streaming through the windows, everything decorated in pastels and tiny baby animal cutouts. There were maybe 30 people there, family, friends, co-workers. The noise level was high, a symphony of laughter, chatter, and the tearing of wrapping paper as people oohed and ahed over onesies and tiny shoes. On the surface, it was perfect. Exactly what you picture when you think of a baby shower. But something felt off from the moment I walked in. Maybe it was the way my husband seemed preoccupied, constantly checking his phone and avoiding eye contact. Or maybe it was the forced smiles I saw exchanged between some of the guests. It was like there was an undercurrent of tension beneath all the festive noise. I tried to shake it off. Hormones, I told myself. Just nerves about becoming a mom. I plastered on a smile, thanked everyone for coming, and tried to focus on the excitement. We played the usual shower games, guessing the baby food flavors, measuring my belly with string, which, side note, is always awkward. I opened gifts, holding up each tiny outfit or fuzzy blanket, forcing my voice to sound enthusiastic. But inside, a knot was tightening in my stomach. Every time I looked at my husband, he was either looking away or giving me that same strained smile. He barely spoke to me, barely touched my arm. It felt like he was a million miles away, even when he was standing right beside me. As the afternoon wore on, the knot turned into a heavy weight. People started leaving, saying their goodbyes and wishing me luck. The crowd thinned, the noise level dropped, and the polite smiles started to look more genuine, but also more pitying. I couldn't quite place it. My husband eventually disappeared, mumbling something about needing to take a call outside. He didn't come back for a long time. I found myself standing alone by the gift table, surrounded by piles of wrapping paper and half-eaten cake. The last few guests were chatting in the kitchen with my sister-in-law. I felt like a prop that had served its purpose and was now just waiting to be put away. The laughter from the kitchen felt distant, like it was happening in another world. My world felt like it was collapsing in on itself. All the suppressed fear and anxiety I'd been pushing down for weeks suddenly surged to the surface. The feeling of being utterly alone, despite having just been surrounded by people who supposedly cared about me, was overwhelming. It wasn't just the shower or my husband's behavior that day. It was everything leading up to it, the quiet arguments, the late nights he wasn't home, the way he'd stopped talking about the baby's arrival with any real excitement. It all culminated in that moment. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I looked around, saw no one was paying attention to me, and just needed a minute. I slipped away from the gift table, through the living room, and found myself in a small, empty guest bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, but I pushed it closed, needing the solitude. I stood there for a second, listening to the muffled sounds of the party outside the door. Then the first tear tracked down my cheek, and then another, and another. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the tears coming faster now, silent and heavy. I buried my face in my hands, trying to stifle the sobs that were starting to shake my body. It wasn't just sadness. It was a profound sense of despair. How had I gotten here? At my own baby shower, a celebration of new life, and I was hiding in a room, crying alone. It felt surreal, like a scene from a movie I never expected to star in. I thought about my baby girl, growing inside me, completely unaware of the turmoil her mother was in. I felt a fresh wave of guilt wash over me. I should be happy, radiant, full of joy. Instead, I was a mess, heartbroken and terrified. What kind of mother was I going to be if I couldn't even hold it together for a few hours? The silence of the room was deafening, broken only by my quiet sobs. I felt completely exposed, vulnerable, and utterly defeated. All those picture-perfect expectations I had for this day, for my life, lay shattered around me like broken glass. I didn't know what was happening with my marriage, or what the future held, and the uncertainty was terrifying. I just knew that at this moment I was the loneliest I had ever been. Have you ever felt that kind of crushing loneliness, even when you know people are just on the other side of the door? What would you have done? Let me know below. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, just letting the tears fall, letting the weight of everything press down on me. My eyes were probably red and puffy, my makeup ruined. I didn't care. I just needed to feel it all, to acknowledge that the perfect picture I'd painted was crumbling. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the lowest point. There's nowhere to go but up from here. I just didn't know how I was going to get up. I didn't know how I was going to walk back out there, pretend everything was okay, and face the rest of the day, let alone the rest of my life. I was still sitting there, lost in my despair, when I heard a soft knock on the door. For a second, I froze. I didn't want anyone to see me like this. My eyes were stinging, my nose was running, I was a complete mess. I just wanted to disappear. The knock came again, a little louder this time, and a voice called my name, soft but insistent. It was Sarah, my best friend, the one person I knew I could count on, no matter what. I hesitated for another moment, contemplating pretending I wasn't there, or maybe just saying I was sick. But something about her voice pulled at me. It sounded worried. I took a shaky breath and managed to croak out a weak, "Come in." The door opened slowly, and Sarah peered in. The moment her eyes landed on me, her face crumpled with concern. I didn't have to say a word. She saw the tears streaming down my face, the way I was huddled in the corner of the room, the picture of misery. She didn't say anything right away. She just stepped inside and closed the door gently behind her. She looked at me for a long moment, and I could feel her taking in the full extent of my breakdown. It was embarrassing, but also, strangely, a relief. Like finally, someone was seeing the truth behind the forced smiles I'd been wearing all day. She walked over to me slowly, her steps quiet on the carpet. She didn't rush, didn't demand to know what was wrong. She just knelt down beside me, right there on the floor, and put an arm around my shoulders. Her embrace was warm and comforting, a stark contrast to the cold, lonely feeling that had enveloped me moments before. I leaned into her, and fresh tears started falling, harder this time, like a dam had broken. I buried my face in her shoulder, not caring that I was probably soaking her dress. She just held me, stroking my hair softly, murmuring quiet, soothing things I couldn't quite make out. But the sound of her voice was enough. After a while, the intensity of the crying subsided, leaving me feeling hollowed out, but slightly calmer. I pulled back, wiping my face with the back of my hand. My eyes must have been swollen shut. I probably looked like I'd gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight. Sarah didn't flinch. She just looked at me with so much compassion in her eyes, it almost made me cry all over again, but for a different reason this time. She finally spoke, her voice gentle. She asked me what happened. She said she'd been looking for me, and when she couldn't find me out there with everyone, she got worried. She said she heard I'd come back here and she just had a feeling I wasn't okay. That's Sarah for you. Always knew when something was wrong. I tried to explain, to articulate the crushing weight of the last few months, the distance that had grown between me and my husband, the fear about the baby, the feeling of being completely alone, even with a room full of people celebrating. The words tumbled out in a rush, broken by sniffles and shaky breaths. I told her about the silence, the lack of connection, how I felt like I was going through this huge life change all by myself. I told her how I'd looked around at everyone laughing and talking and felt like I was watching a movie of someone else's life, a life I was supposed to be living but wasn't. She listened patiently, never interrupting, just holding my hand and rubbing my back. When I finally finished, exhausted and emotionally drained, She just squeezed my hand. She told me it was going to be okay. She said she knew things had been tough, but she reminded me that I wasn't alone. She said she was here, and she wasn't going anywhere. It sounds simple, but hearing those words right at that moment meant everything. It was like a tiny crack of light in the overwhelming darkness I was feeling. She stood up then and smoothed down her dress. She told me she had something for me. She went over to the door and opened it just a crack, whispering to someone outside. Then she turned back to me with a small smile. She said, "Okay, deep breaths. You don't have to go back out there right away, but we need to get you cleaned up a little." She pulled a tissue from her pocket and handed it to me. As I was trying to blot my face, I heard some shuffling outside the door, and then she opened it wider. And there it was. A beautiful, multi-tiered baby shower cake, decorated with little fondant booties and rattles. But it wasn't being carried by a catering person or one of my distant relatives. It was being carried by Sarah and two other friends, Emily and Jessica, who were also part of my closest circle. They were all smiling tentatively, their eyes full of concern, but also a kind of determined cheerfulness. They carefully carried the cake into the room and placed it on the small table by the window. Sarah turned back to me and said, "Okay, we figured you might need a minute, but the guests are starting to wonder where the mom-to-be is, and more importantly, where the cake is." She winked, trying to lighten the mood. Emily and Jessica came over and gave me quick, warm hugs, whispering that they were here for me. Just their presence, the fact that they had followed Sarah, that they were here in this little room with me, away from the main party, felt incredibly significant. It wasn't just Sarah, it was my core group. They saw I was struggling and they came to me. Sarah then gestured towards the door, which Emily had left slightly ajar. She said, "Look, we can take our time, but we wanted to bring the cake in here first, and there are a couple of other things we wanted to give you, just us, before the big gift opening starts." She walked over to the door again, and this time, Emily and Jessica stepped back out for a moment. Sarah reached out and took 2 wrapped boxes from them, bringing them into the room. She put them down on the table next to the cake. They weren't huge, but they looked substantial. Seeing the cake, seeing my friends, seeing those boxes, it was a lot to process after the emotional freefall I just experienced. Sarah came back over to me and gently took my hands. She said, "Hey, we know things are hard. We don't know exactly what's going on, but we see you. We love you. And we're going to get through this, okay? You're not doing this alone." Her words were a lifeline. They didn't magically fix everything, didn't erase the problems waiting for me outside that door, but they gave me something to hold on to. They reminded me that even if my marriage felt like it was crumbling, I still had these incredible women in my corner. They were my village, showing up when I needed them most, bringing cake and kindness and the promise of support. It was the first time all day I felt a genuine flicker of hope, a tiny warmth pushing back against the cold loneliness. It wasn't the perfect picture book baby shower I'd imagined, but maybe, just maybe, it was going to be okay. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I thought. It was like the world tilted back on its axis just a little. The tears weren't gone, not by a long shot, but the crushing weight on my chest eased up. Sarah's hand on mine, looking into her eyes, seeing the genuine concern and love there, it was everything. It wasn't just her either. I looked past her to the others, standing there, giving me soft, understanding smiles. They weren't asking questions, weren't demanding explanations. They were just being there. "Thank you," I managed to whisper, my voice still shaky. "You guys, I thought I was completely alone." Another friend, Jessica, stepped forward. "Never alone, Lena. Not if we can help it." She had this calm, steady presence. "We were wondering where you were. When you didn't come out, Sarah went to check. We got worried." Sarah squeezed my hands gently. "Yeah, we figured something was up. You looked pretty upset when we saw you walk in earlier." I felt a fresh wave of embarrassment wash over me. So they'd seen me trying to hold it together, then apparently failing spectacularly. But strangely, the embarrassment wasn't as sharp as it might have been. It was blunted by the relief of their presence. "I'm sorry," I mumbled. "I didn't mean to ruin anything or make you worry." "Hey," Sarah said, cutting me off gently. "Stop that right now. You didn't ruin anything. This is your shower, and you're allowed to feel however you feel, especially right now." She glanced meaningfully towards the door, then back at me. We both knew what, or rather, who, she was talking about without saying his name. "Yeah," another friend, Chloe, added, her voice warm. "Forget the perfect shower. This is about celebrating you and the baby, whatever that looks like today." They guided me gently over to the small table where the cake sat. It was a simple round cake, decorated with delicate little frosting flowers, pastel colors. It wasn't the elaborate, multi-tiered masterpiece I'd seen at some showers, but it was perfect. It was real. It was made with love, not obligation. And those 3 boxes sat next to it, silent and intriguing. "We brought the essentials," Jessica said with a small smile, gesturing to the boxes. "And cake, because cake fixes almost everything. And because you need sugar right now," Chloe added practically. We sat down, not at a big decorated table, but just here, in this quiet corner of the venue, away from the main room. It felt like our own little world. Sarah lit a candle on the cake, a single small flame. It felt more intimate, more meaningful than a room full of people watching. "Make a wish, Lena," Sarah said softly. I looked at the tiny flame, the faces of my friends around me. A wish? So many wishes were swirling in my head, tangled and contradictory. I wished for things to be okay, for the baby to be healthy, for peace, for strength. But the strongest wish, the one that settled in my heart, was simpler. I wished for things to get better, not magically fixed, but just better, more manageable, less painful. I blew out the candle. They cut the cake, a small slice for each of us. Eating it felt like the first normal thing I'd done all day. It was sweet and comforting. As we ate, they started talking, not about my problems, not about the elephant in the room, but about light things. About their day, about funny stories, about anticipating the baby. They were creating a bubble of normalcy, a safe space for me to just breathe. I watched them, these incredible women. Some I'd known since childhood, others I'd met in recent years, but they were all here, showing up. It wasn't about the gifts, or the fancy decorations, or the games. It was about the connection. It was about knowing you weren't walking through the hardest parts of your life completely alone. After the cake, Sarah gestured to the boxes. "Okay, presents time. These aren't on your registry, by the way. We put our heads together." My heart gave a little flutter of curiosity. Registry gifts were practical, necessary, but gifts chosen specifically, thoughtfully, felt different. More personal. The first box was medium-sized, wrapped in simple brown paper with a colorful ribbon. I carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a beautiful, soft baby blanket. Not a standard store-bought one, but clearly handmade. It was a creamy white, with a delicate knitted pattern. It felt incredibly soft to the touch. "Chloe knitted that," Sarah said. I looked at Chloe, tears welling up again, but different tears this time, tears of gratitude. "Chloe, it's beautiful. Thank you." Chloe smiled, a little shyly. "My grandma taught me. I wanted you to have something made with love just for the baby." The thought of her sitting and knitting this blanket, putting her time and energy and care into it for my baby, was incredibly moving. It wasn't just a blanket. It was a tangible piece of her love and support. The second box was smaller, heavier. I opened it to find a set of high-quality, noise-canceling headphones. I stared at them, confused for a moment. "Headphones? For a baby shower?" Jessica chuckled. "Okay, hear us out on this one. When the baby's crying and you're exhausted and you just need 5 minutes of quiet, put these on. Go sit in a different room if you have to. Just 5 minutes to reset." We learned the hard way. It was such a practical, thoughtful gift. Something born from real-life experience, not a baby book checklist. It acknowledged the reality of motherhood, the challenges, the need for self-preservation. It wasn't glamorous, but it was incredibly useful. It felt like they were saying, we see the beautiful parts, but we also see the hard parts, and we're here for you through all of it. The third box was the smallest, but it felt significant. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a small, smooth stone. It looked like a river stone, worn smooth by water and time. Engraved on it were 3 words: "You are strong." I picked it up, turning it over in my fingers. The simple message, carved into the rock, felt incredibly powerful. It wasn't flashy, wasn't expensive, it was just a reminder. "We found a place that does engraving," Sarah explained softly. "We wanted you to have something you could carry with you. Something to hold on to when you feel like you can't keep going. Because you are strong, Lena. Stronger than you know." Holding that stone, the weight of it in my palm, reading those words, it broke something open inside me. All the emotions I'd been stuffing down, all the fear and hurt and uncertainty came rushing up. But this time, it wasn't just despair. It was mixed with this overwhelming feeling of being seen, being loved, being supported. I started to cry again, but it was different. It wasn't the solitary, hopeless crying from earlier. This was crying with my friends, with their hands on my back, their quiet presence surrounding me. They didn't try to stop the tears. They just let me cry, holding the space for me. "Thank you," I choked out, clutching the stone and the blanket. These mean everything." "Good," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "Because you mean everything to us, and this baby means everything, and we're going to figure this out. Whatever this is." We sat there for a while longer, talking quietly. We didn't go back into the main room. We stayed in our little corner, our little bubble of support. The contrast between the baby shower I'd walked into and the one I was experiencing now was stark. One was a painful reminder of everything that felt like it was falling apart. The other was a lifeline, a tangible demonstration of the love and strength of female friendship. It wasn't the party, it was the people. It was the knowing that even when things were at their absolute worst, there were people who would show up, bring cake and handmade blankets and engraved stones, and just sit with you in the mess. They didn't try to fix my problems, because some problems can't be fixed by friends. But they gave me the strength to face them. They reminded me that I wasn't facing them alone. That alone was a gift more precious than anything on a registry. It was the gift of a village, showing up when the walls felt like they were closing in. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could get through whatever came next. Leaving the baby shower felt different than arriving. The weight hadn't vanished, not entirely, but it had shifted. It felt shared, like the load had been distributed among the shoulders of the women who had shown up for me. Driving home, the little engraved stone sat in the cup holder, smooth and cool under my fingertips. The handmade blanket was folded carefully in the back seat, the soft yarn a tangible piece of comfort. The cake, surprisingly intact, rode shotgun, smelling sweet and hopeful. I walked into the apartment, and the silence hit me. It was the kind of silence that amplified everything you were trying not to hear. The kind that made the air feel thick with unspoken things. He was there, sitting on the couch, scrolling on his phone. He looked up when I came in, a neutral expression on his face. No questions about the shower, no apology for missing it. Just present, physically present. I put the cake down on the kitchen counter. The blanket went over the back of my chair. The stone stayed in my pocket. I needed to talk, needed to say something. The courage my friends had bolstered in me at the shower felt like it was draining away in the quiet stillness of our home. The reality was so much harder to face without their immediate presence, without that bubble of support. It was good, I said, my voice sounding small in the space. My friends came. He nodded, didn't say anything, just went back to his phone, And that was it. That was the conversation, or the lack of one. It was the moment I realized that no amount of external support, no matter how incredible, could fix the fundamental disconnect that was happening between us. It wasn't about a missed baby shower anymore. It was about everything that had led up to it and everything that his reaction, or lack thereof, represented. I walked over to the window. It was getting dark outside. The city lights were starting to twinkle. I remember thinking how strange it was that the world kept going on, completely oblivious to the seismic shift that felt like it was happening inside our four walls. Inside my world. Hours passed. We ate dinner in silence. We sat in the same room but felt miles apart. Every breath felt heavy. Every unsaid word felt like a brick being added to a wall between us. I kept trying to find the right words, the perfect sentence that would unlock everything, that would make him see, make him understand, make him engage. But the words wouldn't come. Or maybe they were there, but the fear of saying them, of potentially shattering what fragile piece we had left, kept them trapped inside. Later that night, lying in bed, the silence felt even louder. The space between us felt vast. I could feel the baby moving inside me, a tiny, hopeful flutter in the darkness. And I felt a fierce, protective surge. This baby deserved more. I deserved more. We deserved a home filled with something other than this suffocating quiet, this painful distance. I knew I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. The baby was coming. Decisions had to be made. Hard decisions. Decisions I had been avoiding, hoping against hope that things would somehow magically improve, that he would suddenly wake up and be the partner I needed him to be, the partner I thought he was. The baby shower had been a turning point, but not in the way I expected. It hadn't fixed things with him. It had fixed things for me. It had shown me I wasn't alone in the world, even if I felt alone in my relationship. It had given me a glimpse of the strength I had within me, the strength that came from connection, from friendship, from knowing I was loved and supported unconditionally. That night, staring at the ceiling, I finally let myself acknowledge the truth I had been running from. The relationship wasn't working. It hadn't been working for a while, and the baby, while the most wonderful thing in the world, wasn't going to fix it. It was going to amplify the cracks, make the distance even more apparent. I thought about the future, about bringing a baby into this environment, about the kind of parents we would be or wouldn't be together. It was a terrifying thought. But staying was starting to feel even more terrifying. Staying meant continuing to live in this emotional desert, pretending everything was okay when it was clearly not. Staying meant settling for a fraction of what I knew deep down I deserved, and what my child deserved. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind raced, replaying conversations, analyzing silences, trying to pinpoint where we had gone wrong, how we had ended up here. Two people who had once been so close, now feeling like strangers sharing a space. The next morning felt heavy. The air in the apartment still felt thick. There was no sudden change, no dramatic confrontation right away. It was a slow dawning, a gradual acceptance of the inevitable. I went through the motions of the day, but my mind was elsewhere, running through scenarios, weighing options, trying to figure out how to even begin to untangle our lives. I looked at the little stone from my friend again. Strength. I held it tight. I was going to need it. All the strength I could muster. And I knew I had access to it now, not just from within myself, but from the network of women who had literally shown up with cake when I was at my lowest. They were my village, and I was going to lean on them. Because I couldn't do this alone. Not anymore. The decision wasn't made in a single moment, but the process began that night after the shower. The process of accepting what was and finding the courage to ask for what I needed, even if it meant completely changing the path I thought I was on. It was the hardest realization I had ever faced. But thanks to a baby shower that started with tears and ended with unexpected gifts of friendship, I felt like I might actually be able to face it. The next steps wouldn't be easy. I knew that much. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of resolve. A quiet determination to build a life. A good life for me and my baby, no matter what that looked like. Even if it looked completely different than I had ever imagined. That flicker of resolve felt fragile at first, like a tiny candle flame in a hurricane. But it was there. And the next morning, I clung to it. I didn't wake up feeling magically better, no. I woke up feeling the same familiar weight, the same fear. But underneath it, there was that tiny spark. The understanding that I had a choice. I could keep pretending, keep trying to force a life that wasn't working, or I could face the reality and start building something new. And I knew deep down that building something real, even if it was hard, was the only way forward. The first step was the hardest. It was reaching out. Not just a casual text, but a real, vulnerable conversation. I picked up the phone and called Sarah. She was one of the women who had shown up with the cake, the one with the eyes that just seemed to understand everything without you having to say a word. My voice shook a little when she answered. I told her I needed to talk, really talk. She didn't hesitate. My place in an hour? Bring your pajamas, you might need to stay. That simple offer of space and time, no questions asked initially, meant everything. Walking into her living room felt like stepping into a different world. It was cozy, lived in, smelled faintly of coffee and something baking. She just sat with me for a few minutes, didn't push, just let me collect myself. And then, the words just started tumbling out. Everything. The fear, the disappointment, the sheer exhaustion of trying to hold it all together. I told her about the baby shower, about the unexpected feeling of not being alone. I told her about the decision I was starting to make, the one that felt terrifying and necessary all at once. I told her I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. Sarah just listened. She didn't offer platitudes or try to fix it. She just nodded, occasionally reaching out to squeeze my hand. When I finally ran out of words, she just said, "Okay, that's a lot. But you're not alone. You said it yourself. We're here." She told me about resources I didn't even know existed, things for single mothers, for people needing help figuring out housing or work. She didn't make it sound easy, but she made it sound possible. That conversation was the first time I truly felt like I wasn't drowning. I was still in the water, but someone had thrown me a lifeline. After talking to Sarah, reaching out to the others felt less daunting. I called Maria, who had 3 kids and seemed to juggle life with impossible grace. I talked to Chloe, who was a lawyer and offered practical advice about legal stuff I hadn't even considered. Each conversation was different, but the underlying message was the same. You have support. You are not alone in this. Lean on them. That was the phrase I kept coming back to. For so long, I had been conditioned to believe that asking for help was a weakness, that you had to be strong and independent and figure everything out yourself. But I was learning that true strength wasn't about doing everything alone. It was about knowing when and how to let others support you. It was a revolutionary concept for me. The practical steps started slowly, making lists, researching, having difficult conversations I had been avoiding. There was the conversation with my parents, which was hard in a different way. They were worried, of course, and maybe a little disappointed that my life wasn't following the path they had envisioned. But they were also loving in their way, and they offered help too, though it came with its own set of strings sometimes. Navigating that was another layer of complexity. Then there were the conversations I had to have regarding the baby's father. Those were painful, filled with hurt and misunderstanding. Trying to figure out how to move forward, how to co-parent or not co-parent, how to handle the emotional and practical fallout of a relationship that had ended long before I admitted it to myself. It felt like picking at a wound that wouldn't heal. There were moments when I felt so angry, so resentful, wondering how I had ended up in this situation, carrying all this weight alone. But then I'd remember that tiny flicker of resolve, that village of women, and I'd pull myself back from the edge of despair. One of the biggest hurdles was figuring out work. I had a decent job, but it wasn't flexible. How was I going to manage childcare? Could I even afford childcare? Did I need to look for something completely different? This felt like a mountain I had no idea how to climb. Sarah helped me brainstorm. Maria shared her experiences. Chloe offered to look over my resume. It wasn't just advice, it was practical help, people showing up in tangible ways. Someone offered to watch my dog when I had appointments. Someone else dropped off a bag of maternity clothes her sister didn't need anymore. These small acts of kindness were like little stones helping me build a path across the rocky ground. During this time, I had to make some tough decisions about who I could rely on and who I couldn't. Some people I thought would be there weren't, and others I barely knew stepped up in unexpected ways. It made you rethink everything you thought you knew about relationships and support systems. It was eye-opening, sometimes painful, but ultimately clarifying. You learn very quickly who is truly in your corner when life gets messy. Thinking back on it now, there was one particular decision I had to make around this time that felt like a real turning point. It involved cutting ties with someone who wasn't just unsupportive, but actively making things harder. It was terrifying because it meant letting go of a long history, of the hope that things might get better. But staying connected was doing more harm than good. It was a moment of choosing my own peace and my baby's well-being over trying to maintain a relationship that was toxic. It was incredibly difficult, and I wrestled with it for weeks. What would you have done in that situation? Would you have held on, hoping for change, or would you have walked away? Let me know below. Making that choice, as hard as it was, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. It solidified the understanding that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was necessary for survival and growth. It was another step on this new, unplanned path. It wasn't the path I had envisioned, the one with the white picket fence and the perfect partner, but it was my path. And for the first time, I was walking it with my eyes open, supported by a network of incredible women, and with that tiny growing flicker of resolve lighting the way. The next few months were a blur of appointments, decisions, and learning to navigate life as a woman, preparing to be a mother, not in the way I had planned, but in a way that was becoming uniquely mine. Those next few months really were a blur. My belly grew, seemingly overnight sometimes, and with it came all the usual pregnancy stuff you read about. The weird cravings, the exhaustion that hits you like a truck, the nesting instinct kicking in with a vengeance. But it was different too. Every kick, every flutter, every ultrasound image wasn't just about a baby growing. It was about my baby, our journey, happening outside of the picture I'd always painted in my head. I started going to prenatal classes, most of them filled with couples. That was tough sometimes, sitting there alone while partners practiced breathing exercises together or asked questions about labor and delivery. I felt like the odd one out, a living embodiment of the unplanned path. But then I'd meet another single mom-to-be, or a woman whose partner traveled constantly, and we'd share a knowing look, a quiet solidarity. It helped. It reminded me that I wasn't the only one navigating this without the conventional setup. My friends were amazing. They rallied around me in ways I hadn't even known I needed. Sarah, especially, was my rock. She'd come over just to sit with me when I was too tired to move, or drag me out for a walk when I felt like a beached whale. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. She helped me pick out a crib, paint the nursery a soft green, and fold tiny onesies that still felt surreal in my hands. My mom, bless her heart, started knitting baby blankets and sending me boxes of hand-me-down baby clothes from cousins. It wasn't the village I expected, but it was my village, built on love and support, not obligation or expectation. Preparing for a baby is expensive, even when you're trying to be frugal. There's the crib, the stroller, the car seat, diapers, wipes, bottles, clothes, blankets. The list felt endless. I worked as long as I could, saving every penny, but there was a constant knot of anxiety in my stomach about money. How was I going to do this all on my own? How would I afford childcare? What about when I needed to go back to work? These questions circled endlessly in my mind, especially late at night when the baby was kicking up a storm and sleep felt impossible. I tried not to dwell on the what-ifs too much. I focused on the practical steps: budgeting, researching affordable healthcare options, looking into government assistance programs. It wasn't glamorous, and it certainly wasn't the carefree pregnancy I'd once imagined. But it was necessary. It was about building a secure foundation for my baby, brick by painstaking brick. Physically, pregnancy was a roller coaster. Some days I felt strong and capable, like I could conquer the world. Other days, I was nauseous, exhausted, and overwhelmed by the sheer physical demands. My body was changing in ways I'd never anticipated, stretch marks appearing like tiny road maps on my skin, my feet swelling to twice their normal size. It was humbling, and sometimes, honestly, a little disheartening. I'd look in the mirror and barely recognize myself. But then I'd feel a strong kick from inside, a reminder of the incredible life growing within me, and it would put everything back into perspective. This body wasn't just mine anymore. It was a vessel, a home for this precious new life. As the due date got closer, the excitement started to mix more intensely with fear. Fear of labor, fear of not being a good mom, fear of raising a child without a partner there every day. The world felt both incredibly small, centered entirely around this tiny human, and terrifyingly vast, full of challenges I wasn't sure I was ready to face alone. I read every book I could get my hands on, watched countless YouTube videos, trying to absorb all the knowledge I could about newborns and parenting. It felt like cramming for the most important exam of my life, one I couldn't fail. I also started thinking more about the birth plan, or lack thereof. I wasn't fixated on a specific outcome, just on getting through it safely for both of us. I talked to my doctor, a kind, no-nonsense woman who made me feel seen and heard. She reassured me that I could do this, that my body was designed for this, and that I would have a team of people there to support me. Her confidence was a lifeline on days when mine was completely depleted. The baby's room slowly came together. The crib was assembled, the changing table stocked with diapers and wipes, the little bookshelf filled with board books. It was simple, but it felt warm and welcoming. Every time I walked in there, a wave of emotion would wash over me, a mix of anticipation, love, and that persistent thread of anxiety. It was becoming real, very, very real. I found myself talking to my belly constantly, telling the baby about my day, singing songs, reading stories. It felt natural, like I was already building a connection, a bond that was uniquely ours. I knew, deep down, that no matter how this journey had started, or who wasn't walking it with me, this baby was wanted, loved, and going to be welcomed into a home filled with warmth and support, even if it wasn't the picture-perfect family unit I'd once dreamed of. It was our family unit, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The weeks leading up to the final stretch were filled with appointments, last-minute preparations, and that heavy, waiting feeling. Every ache, every twinge, made me wonder if this was it. My friends kept checking in, offering help, distracting me with movie nights or simple dinners. They knew I was getting anxious, and they were just there. Their presence was a quiet comfort, a reminder that I wasn't truly alone in this. I was surrounded by love, even if it wasn't the romantic love I'd initially envisioned building a family upon. It was a different kind of love, perhaps even stronger in its own way, forged in shared experiences and unwavering support. It was getting closer. The baby would be here soon, and I had to be ready. The waiting was the hardest part. Every day felt like a week. I'd wake up in the morning, and the first thought was always, "Is today the day?" I tried to stay busy, nesting like crazy, organizing the nursery for the 10th time, washing tiny clothes, packing and repacking the hospital bag. My friends would call or text, checking in. "Any signs?" they'd ask, or they'd just send funny memes to distract me. They knew I was bouncing off the walls with a mix of excitement and pure, unadulterated fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the pain, fear of being responsible for this tiny human all by myself. Even with all the support, that part felt intensely personal, a responsibility that rested squarely on my shoulders. Then came the false alarms. little twinges that I'd convince myself were contractions, only for them to fizzle out. I'd call my best friend, voice tight with anticipation, and she'd talk me through it, calm me down, remind me it was probably just Braxton Hicks. "Your body's just getting ready," she'd say, her voice soothing. It helped, knowing she was just a phone call away, ready to drop everything if needed. I remember one night, it was late, maybe 2 a.m. I woke up with a definite cramp, stronger than the others. I lay there for a minute, timing it on my phone. It came again, a few minutes later, and again. Okay, this felt different. This felt real. My heart started pounding. I got out of bed, shuffled to the bathroom, and just stood there, trying to breathe through the sensations. They weren't excruciating yet, but they were consistent. I called my best friend. It rang twice, and then she answered, voice a little groggy but instantly alert. "Hey, you okay?" I started, my voice shaky. "I think it's happening." There was a beat of silence on the other end, and then a burst of energy. Okay. Deep breaths. Tell me what's going on." I described the contractions, the timing. She was already getting dressed on the other end. "All right, don't panic. I'm on my way. Have you called your doctor? Did you check the hospital bag? Is the car seat in?" Her practicality grounded me. It was like she was processing it for both of us. I hadn't called the doctor yet. My mind was just racing. I hung up with her, took a few more breaths, timed another contraction, and then called the doctor's office. The on-call nurse was calm and reassuring. She asked me questions, listened to my description, and advised me to head to the hospital when the contractions were consistently a certain number of minutes apart and lasting a certain length. They weren't quite there yet, but they were getting closer. My best friend arrived maybe 20 minutes later, looking wide awake and determined. She hugged me tight. "You're doing great," she whispered. "Just breathe." She helped me finish packing the last-minute things, made sure I had my phone charger, snacks, water. She even made me eat a piece of toast, telling me I'd need the energy. She was amazing, just a rock. The contractions kept coming, getting stronger, getting closer together. We timed them together. She kept me distracted between them, talking about anything and everything, cracking jokes, holding my hand when a particularly strong one hit. It was still the middle of the night, the house quiet except for our voices and my ragged breathing. Finally, we hit the threshold the nurse had given me. It was time. Getting into the car felt like an Olympic sport with the contractions coming regularly now. The drive to the hospital was a blur of pain and anticipation. My best friend drove, talking to me the whole way, keeping me focused, reminding me to breathe. I gripped the door handle, my knuckles white. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for, dreading and hoping for all at once. We pulled up to the emergency entrance. It felt surreal, like I was in a movie. We went inside, and everything shifted into hospital mode. Questions, paperwork, being led to a labor and delivery room. It was quiet, sterile, and suddenly felt very real. I was here. Labor was happening. They got me settled in the room, hooked me up to monitors. The nurses were kind, professional. They checked me, confirmed I was in labor, and explained what would happen next. My best friend stayed right by my side, holding my hand, rubbing my back during contractions. She didn't have to say much, her presence was enough. Knowing I wasn't facing this alone was everything. The contractions intensified, becoming more frequent, more painful. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, a deep, powerful force taking over my body. I focused on breathing, on getting through each wave as it came. The hours started to blend together. The sun came up, casting a pale light through the window. My best friend was still there, looking tired but resolute. She was my constant in a world that felt like it was shifting and rearranging itself with every contraction. There was no room for fear of the future anymore, just the immediate, intense focus on the present moment, on the next breath, on the next contraction. It was just me, my body, and this incredible process unfolding. The contractions just kept coming, stronger and closer together. It felt like my body was being squeezed from the inside out, a relentless vice tightening and releasing. There was a point where I lost track of time completely. The world outside the room ceased to exist. It was just the rhythm of the pain, the moments of desperate rest in between, and the quiet strength radiating from my best friend next to me. She didn't flinch. She didn't complain about being tired. She just was there, holding my hand, putting a cool cloth on my forehead, whispering things like, "You're doing great," and "Just breathe through it." Simple words, but they were anchors in the storm. The nurses checked on me periodically. They were calm, efficient. They'd look at the monitors, check my dilation, and give updates in low, steady voices. 4 centimeters, then 6 centimeters. It felt like forever between each number, like I was climbing an endless mountain. The pain was unlike anything I could have ever imagined. There was a moment, somewhere between 6 and 8 centimeters, where I just broke. I remember sobbing, not from sadness, but from the sheer intensity of the physical sensation. It was overwhelming, consuming. I felt like I couldn't do it, like my body couldn't take any more. My best friend just held me closer. She didn't try to talk me out of it, didn't offer platitudes. She just let me feel it, and her presence told me she wasn't going anywhere. That was everything. It was in that moment, that raw, vulnerable moment, that I knew I needed help. I had initially wanted to try without an epidural, to experience it fully, but the reality was so much more intense than any birth class or book had prepared me for. I looked at the nurse and just managed to say, I think I need the epidural." There was no judgment, just immediate action. They explained the process, had me curl up on the side of the bed. My best friend held my hands, murmuring reassurance while the anesthesiologist worked. It was a strange feeling, a tiny prick compared to the roaring pain of the contractions. And then, slowly, blessedly, the intensity began to recede. It wasn't that the contractions stopped. The monitor showed they were still coming, strong as ever. But the sharp, debilitating pain was gone. It was replaced by a deep pressure, a different kind of sensation. I could still feel my legs, still feel the tightening, but I could breathe. I could think. I could rest between waves. That epidural was a game changer. It allowed me to regain some control, some composure. The hours that followed were different. I could talk between contractions, even laugh a little with my best friend. We talked about silly things, tried to distract ourselves. But underneath the conversation, the process was still unfolding. The nurses came back, checked again. 8 centimeters, then 9. The pressure intensified with each contraction, a powerful force pushing downwards. It was still intense, but manageable now. I could feel my body working, feel the baby moving down. Then came the point where the pressure was constant, overwhelming. It felt like I needed to push, like my body was just instinctively trying to bear down. The nurse checked one last time. 10 centimeters. You're ready. Ready. The word hung in the air. After all those hours of waiting, of enduring, the moment was finally here. The room suddenly felt different, more focused. The energy shifted from waiting to action. The nurse explained what to do, how to push. My best friend moved to stand by my head, holding one hand, her eyes locked on mine. The doctor came in, calm and ready. It was time. The first push felt awkward, ineffective. I wasn't sure I was doing it right. But with the guidance of the nurse and the doctor and the relentless encouragement from my best friend, I started to find the rhythm. Push with the contraction, hold my breath, bear down with everything I had. It was exhausting work. Every muscle in my body strained. The pressure was immense. But there was also this incredible sense of purpose. This was what all the pain, all the waiting, all the fear had been leading up to. I was actively working to bring my baby into the world. My best friend was my rock. She coached me through every push, her voice steady and strong. "You're doing amazing. Keep going. You're almost there. When I felt like I couldn't push anymore, like I had nothing left, she would just squeeze my hand tighter and I would find a little more strength. The room filled with the sounds of my exertion, the nurse's calm instructions, and my best friend's unwavering support. The pushes became more effective. I could feel the baby moving down further with each wave. The pressure intensified, becoming less of a general force and more focused. I could feel the stretching, the burning. It was intense, raw, primal. But I wasn't scared. Not anymore. There was no room for fear, only the overwhelming drive to get this baby out. The doctor said, "I can see the head." That was the boost I needed. Seeing the relief and excitement on my best friend's face mirrored my own surge of adrenaline. It was real. We were so close. I dug deep, found a reserve of strength I didn't know I had, and pushed with everything I had left. I dug deep, found a reserve of strength I didn't know I had, and pushed with everything I had left. The burning intensified, a ring of fire that consumed everything else. My best friend's voice was a steady beacon, urging me on. The doctor and nurses were a blur of focused energy around me. It felt like an eternity, a struggle against an invisible force, and then suddenly, a release. A slippery, warm weight emerged, and the intense pressure vanished, replaced by a profound emptiness in my core. And then I heard it. The most beautiful sound in the world. A cry. Not a weak whimper, but a strong, indignant cry that filled the room and my soul. It was real. My baby was here. They lifted the baby, still covered in vernix, and placed them directly on my chest. Skin to skin. It was instant. The world outside the three of us, me, the baby, and my best friend, faded away. This little human, who I had carried and nurtured for 9 months, who I had worried about and dreamt of, was finally in my arms. I looked down, tears streaming down my face, mixing with the sweat and exhaustion. They were perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, a little button nose, and eyes that were still adjusting to the bright hospital lights. I don't remember the exact color, just that they were open, looking around at this strange new world. My best friend leaned over, her face wet with tears too, a look of pure joy and awe on her face. She gently stroked the baby's back. Neither of us could speak for a moment, just gazing at this miracle. It was a shared moment of profound love and relief, a culmination of everything we had been through together, everything I had faced alone. But I wasn't alone now, not anymore. The nurses were doing their checks, cleaning the baby gently while they were still on my chest. I could feel their little body against mine, hear their tiny breaths, feel the rise and fall of their chest. It was overwhelming. All the pain, all the fear, all the loneliness I had felt leading up to this moment, it all melted away. It was replaced by this fierce, protective love, a love so powerful it felt like it would consume me. They eventually took the baby briefly to weigh and measure them, do the necessary checks. It felt like an eternity, even though I knew it was just a few minutes. My arms felt empty the moment they were gone. My best friend stayed right by my side, holding my hand, her presence a comfort even in the midst of this new, exhilarating chaos. She told me how amazing I was, how strong I had been. Her words washed over me, soothing and validating. When they brought the baby back, swaddled and looking even more perfect, I couldn't stop looking at them. I held them close, inhaling that sweet newborn smell. It was everything I had hoped for and more. This was the moment I had fought for, the moment I had endured so much to reach. The doctor delivered the placenta, which felt like a strange, anticlimactic event after the main show. The nurses helped me get cleaned up a little, made sure I was comfortable. But my focus was entirely on the baby. I just wanted to hold them, study every inch of them, make sure they were real. My best friend was still there, beaming. She helped me adjust my position, brought me a sip of water. She was just as excited as I was, maybe even more so in some ways, witnessing this journey from the outside. She had been there for the darkest moments, and now she was here for the absolute brightest. Her unwavering support throughout my pregnancy, through labor, and now in these first moments, meant the world to me. I didn't have a partner here, but I had her, and in that moment, that felt like enough. More than enough. Holding my baby felt like coming home. Like I had finally found the missing piece of myself. This tiny person was entirely dependent on me, and I felt ready. Ready for the sleepless nights, the endless feedings, the constant learning curve. Ready to be a mother. It wasn't going to be easy, I knew that. Doing it on my own would present challenges I couldn't even fully grasp yet. But looking at the baby's peaceful face, hearing their soft little sounds, I knew I could do anything for them. The room was quiet now, the adrenaline of the birth starting to wear off, replaced by a deep exhaustion. But it was a good exhaustion, a fulfilling exhaustion. My body ached, I was sore in places I didn't know existed, but none of that mattered. I had my baby. My best friend stayed with me for a while longer, just sitting quietly, watching me with the baby. We didn't need to talk much. Our bond, forged through years of friendship and solidified by this shared experience, transcended words. She understood what this moment meant to me, how much I had overcome to get here. She saw the transformation happening within me, the shift from a scared, lonely pregnant woman to a mother holding her child. Eventually, the nurses suggested my best friend should probably go home and get some rest. She was reluctant to leave, I could tell. But she knew I needed to bond with the baby and also get some much-needed rest myself. We hugged tightly. I thanked her, my voice thick with emotion. Simple words couldn't convey the depth of my gratitude for her presence, her strength, her love. After she left, it was just me and the baby in the quiet hospital room. The door was closed, the lights were dim. It felt surreal. After all the pushing, all the people, all the noise, there was just this profound stillness. I held the baby close, stroking their soft hair. I whispered to them, telling them how much I loved them, how long I had waited for them. It was the beginning of our life together. A life that started not in loneliness, but in the arms of love, even if it was just the two of us for now. The journey had been hard, much harder than I ever anticipated, filled with moments of despair and doubt. But looking down at the tiny face nestled against my chest, I knew it had all been worth it. Every single tear, every single ache, every single moment of fear. It had all led me to this, my baby, my everything. And just like that, the world outside the hospital room faded away. It was just us, my baby, my everything. The exhaustion was immense, a physical weight I'd never felt before, but there was this surge of something else too, something powerful and protective. Holding them there, listening to their tiny breaths, it felt like every single hurdle, every heartbreak, every moment of doubt had led me right here to this perfect, fragile moment. The first few days were a blur, a beautiful, messy blur of feedings, diaper changes, and just staring. So much staring. I watched them sleep. I watched them stretch. I watched their tiny hands curl around my finger. Leaving the hospital felt monumental. Stepping out into the sunshine with this little human I was now completely responsible for, it was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. My small apartment, which had felt so empty for so long, suddenly felt full. Full of tiny clothes, swaddling blankets, bottles, and the constant, comforting presence of a baby. Life changed instantly and completely. Sleep became a luxury, quiet moments a distant memory. There were days when I felt like I was just surviving, running on fumes and caffeine. The loneliness I'd felt before was different now. It wasn't the ache of wanting, but sometimes the isolation of being the sole caregiver, navigating the steep learning curve of parenthood alone. There were moments when the baby wouldn't stop crying, and I felt utterly helpless, questioning if I was doing anything right. Was I feeding them enough? Were they too hot, too cold? Was I a terrible mother? Those were the dark moments, the ones you don't always see in the filtered photos. But then, the baby would fall asleep on my chest, their weight a comforting anchor, or they'd look up at me with those wide, innocent eyes, and my heart would just melt. All the exhaustion, all the doubt, it would just dissipate in that instant. This was what I had fought for. This was my miracle. Support came in unexpected ways. My friend, bless her heart, checked in constantly, bringing food, offering to hold the baby so I could shower or just sit in silence for 5 minutes. My parents, though far away, called every day, their voices a lifeline. I even found a local online group for single parents, and connecting with other people going through similar things, sharing tips and frustrations and tiny victories, it made a huge difference. It reminded me I wasn't completely alone in this new journey. The main conflict, the long, arduous struggle to get to motherhood, was over. I had won. I had my baby. But that didn't mean life was suddenly easy. It was just different. The challenges were new. Instead of doctor's appointments and treatments and waiting, it was sleep deprivation and teething and learning how to soothe a fussy baby. But these challenges felt productive. They were part of building a life, not just trying to create one. Watching my baby grow, hitting those first milestones, the first smile, the first giggle, the first time they rolled over, each one felt like a triumph, not just for them, but for me too. I was doing it. We were doing it. This little person, who had been just a dream, a desperate hope for so long, was real. They were thriving, and I was, slowly but surely, finding my footing as a mother. There were still tough days when the weight of responsibility felt heavy, days when I missed the simplicity of my old life, or just a full night's sleep. But those days were fewer and farther between. They were overshadowed by the immense joy, the unconditional love, and the incredible bond that was growing stronger between me and my baby every single day. Looking back at everything, the years of trying, the setbacks, the moments I wanted to give up, it feels like a different lifetime. That woman, so consumed by her desire for a child, she was strong, yes, but she was also fragile, vulnerable. The woman I am now, holding my baby, navigating the beautiful chaos of motherhood, I feel a different kind of strength, a resilience forged in fire, tempered by love. This journey wasn't what I expected. It was harder, longer, and more painful in many ways than I could have ever imagined. But the destination, this quiet room filled with the soft sounds of my baby sleeping, it's more beautiful, more fulfilling, more everything than I ever dared to hope. It's not the end of the story, of course. It's just the beginning of a brand new one, a story of a mother and her child facing the world together. Building this life piece by piece, sometimes against incredible odds, it makes you reflect on what truly matters. It makes you appreciate the small things, the quiet moments, the love that sustains you. And it makes you wonder about the paths others have taken, the mountains they've climbed to reach their own versions of happiness or fulfillment. Maybe you've faced your own long struggles, your own seemingly impossible goals. How did you keep going when things felt hopeless? What fueled your determination? Let me know below. My baby stirs, a tiny sigh escaping their lips. I gently rock them, whispering promises of a life filled with love and laughter and security. We made it. We are here. And the future, whatever it holds, we will face it together, mother and child, a family born from hope, perseverance, and an overwhelming amount of love. This is our story,